Welcome to the AAFMP Professional Development Series. In today's session, Deep Roots, Strong Branches, a trail to rewarding careers for forest management professionals. Before we begin, in the spirit of reciprocity and respect, we'll begin with just a land acknowledgement. I'd like to give respect to the land from which we're all meeting and collaborating from today. We're joining from all over Alberta, so joining from different areas. We give this respect because it's through the land that we are supported to live, to eat, to work, to thrive, and make our lives. So I myself reside and make my life in the place I know as Edmonton, which is situated in Treaty 6 territory in Métis Nation Region 4, where I am neighbor to Enoch Cree Nation. But I have lived in many lands beyond these, including Treaty 7 and 8 territories, and these lands have been known and made by many Indigenous people for centuries before us. So I encourage all participants today, joining from across Alberta and even from Saskatchewan, to take personal reflection from where you're joining from today. Before we get into the session, just a few housekeeping items. We do ask that you keep your mic muted unless you are asking a question. We have reserved time at the end for you to be able to ask questions, but throughout the session, if something comes up, please feel free to ask it in chat. We will hold on to it until those question periods. If you want to ask anonymously, you can send it directly to me, the host, and I will share it, or you can just ask it through the chat. You'll be able to unmute yourself at the end and ask questions as you go. I know some of you are joining as small and large groups, so if you do have questions from the groups, feel free to come up towards the computer and ask so that the mic picks you up, or have your facilitator put it through the chat for you. We'll be glad to get to it. This event is eligible for level 1 under the continuing competence program. So if you are an AAFMP registrant who's participating in this program for continuing competence hours, you can report it afterwards. Please feel free to use the notes template that we shared as reporting evidence. At the end of this session, we are going to share an evaluation form. So we really appreciate it if you do take a minute or so to go through that. Just let us know how we're doing, and helps give us some information about how to carry on with these programs going forward. Okay, getting into the presentation. Today's session is for anyone who is seeking a rewarding and satisfying career in forestry. We'll emphasize how mentorship and effective coaching can guide us to and through a diverse career path for forest management professionals. Our panelists will share their insights and their experiences, and they'll highlight how guidance and support can empower individuals to discover the right fit for their skills and aspirations in this vibrant profession. They'll demonstrate how mentorship and effective coaching strategies can guide professionals toward fulfilling and diverse career paths. Our speakers today are Mike Poscente, Annette Bugnett, and Emily Byvank. Mike is an RPFT with over 40 years of experience in natural resource management as a regulator and consultant. He co-founded CPP Environmental Corp, where he focuses on reclamation and advises clients on responsible resource management policies. A highlight of his career and his role as a technical advisor is for the Salkit Silver Mine Closure Project in Mongolia, which was completed in 2023. Annette is an RPFT with over 6 years experience in environmental consulting with CPP Environmental. She has significant knowledge in the fundamentals of environmental consulting and has exposure to a wide range of projects from which she continues to learn and grow in an ever-changing industry. And Emily is a natural resource planner who has a diverse and rewarding set of experience in industry and forestry and environmental consulting, and has most recently started her own forestry consulting business. So welcome to our panelists. I will pass it over to you to share. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for participating today. And, on behalf of Emily and Annette and myself, we're really pleased to be here and talk to you today about how to have a rewarding career and the diversity and things you can expect as you go forward in your career. And especially how coaching can influence that and take you in directions that maybe perhaps you thought you'd never be going. What we are going to be doing today is first, just to go over the agenda, I'll be talking a little bit about the two themes, which are coaching and career diversity. And we'll explore that a little bit. And then I'll talk about some of the coaching practices that I use and that I've applied throughout the past number of years to people that I coach and mentor. Then we'll have a panel discussion, and Annette and Emily and myself will all share our experiences, not only about coaching, but being the mentee and being the person that's receiving the coaching. And I think those experiences will provide you a real broad range of ideas and concepts that you can use in perhaps selecting a coach and realizing upon coaching to build your careers. Then we'll do a short summary on what are the outcomes of coaching? What is it? What are some of the objectives we really want to achieve? And what are some of the outcomes that potentially can occur through good coaching opportunities? Then we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about diversity in professional careers. We're fortunate in Alberta about our scope of work and what we're able to do through our regulatory profession. And we'll explore and have a discussion on some of those avenues and talk about what we need to do to pursue and have those very rewarding careers in forestry and environmental management and forest resource management. And then we'll close with a summary of some key points that we'd each like to bring. And we'll have an open discussion that gives you the opportunity to provide any comments or ask any questions that you might have. So the two key themes that we'd like to talk about today is, first of all, coaching. Personally, I think as professionals that we have a responsibility to provide coaching services to new professionals that are entering our profession and graduates of forestry programs. And that's kind of an official part of it, because we have a responsibility to coach and mentor our new entrants and guide them through their period where they're getting their hours and to become fully accredited professionals. That's one part of it. And it's an obligation we have as professionals. But I'd like to also stress that as we progress in our careers, and especially as we get to the mid-career or towards the end of the career, such as myself, there's a real benefit. We've gained so much knowledge in the experiences that we've been able to gather. And it's really rewarding to pass on that knowledge and help others and be the coach for others that are starting to develop their career paths or specializing in a certain field or want to better develop their soft skills. And to me, that's really important. And it's one of our obligations as a professional throughout our career, not just at the start or at a certain part, but throughout. And the second theme is career diversity. When I think back on my career and all of the things I've been able to do, and I'll share some of those things later in the presentation today, it's been so rewarding and I've been so fortunate. And there's absolutely nothing in my career that I regret doing. Everything had a positive experience for me. Sometimes I didn't like some things as much as others, but I certainly learned a lot. And everything I've done has has provided growth in me as an individual, me as a professional, and in what I'm able to advise others on. So we'll have a really good discussion on career diversity and what a rewarding career that our forestry profession can bring us. Just like to share some coaching practices right now. And this isn't really a course today about how to be a coach. What I'm sharing with you is some of the concepts that I use that have been successful for me and that I think are important. And certainly this list is not all inclusive. There's whole courses you can take on coaching that gets into a lot of the theory. But first of all, in my approach, especially within my company, I offer coaching services to all my employees, not just a particular level or job classification, but everyone in my company that wants to receive coaching, I will certainly sit down with them and provide those services. And it's not only the people within my company, I'm as a late life and a continuing education approach that I've practiced in mid-career, I went back to university and did an MBA. And I also have coached several business students who have graduated from from the University of Alberta business program on how to start up companies and on various business practices. So coaching can be within our profession, but it can also be outside of our life in sports, in volunteer initiatives, and in other things. So even though our talk today is about the forestry profession, coaching can span a way broader approach in our lives than just from a professional capacity. I think coaching really builds your character. It provides you with some credibility in your profession as well as an individual. And it's so rewarding. An important part of coaching is to provide and gain that mutual trust with the individuals that you're coaching. And that's two ways. They have to have trust in the coach. The coach has to have trust in the person that they're coaching, that they're going to receive the information and apply the information properly. And establishing that mutual trust is really important to have an open and candid discussion on the things that you need to discuss. As a coach, I like to highlight strengths of the people I'm coaching and work on their weaknesses and be honest about their weaknesses. Celebrate successes. Those are all three components that are so important. And that goes back to being candid and having that openness in communications to identify those strengths and weaknesses. And coaching is not cookie cutter. You have to understand the individual you're coaching. You have to understand their personality and personalize your methods for those individuals. Sometimes when I'm providing critical feedback, some people are very open to that and receptive to it and want to hear it. Others are very sensitive to that, and you have to have different approaches on how you present that information and recognize how people are receiving that information to make it valuable, that you can highlight the things that they need to work on. Coaching is also employee driven. I don't force anybody into coaching. It has to be driven by the individual's need and desire to be receptive to the coaching. If you force coaching on people, it's just going to become a kind of automatic session that you have that is not meaningful. The people you're coaching have to be receptive to it. It has to work for them. So it really has to be an employee-driven process. Coaching is not supervision. Supervision is different. As a supervisor, you have obligations, some of which are legal obligations under the labor code to ensure employee safety, to ensure that people you're supervising are properly trained in the competencies they need to do their job, making sure they show up on time and kind of the policy related things. And that's not really what coaching is about. And I'm not saying you can't be a coach if you're a supervisor. You certainly can, but you have to separate your supervisory duties from your coaching duties. Coaching is about providing people with ideas and concepts, and perhaps in some cases, some skills to be able to do their jobs. It's often about soft skills, how to communicate better, how to tackle a sensitive issue, how to solve problems, how to deal with problem people. It's not really about technical matters, and it's not really about the supervisory type of roles. So really try, if you're a coach, really try to differentiate between the coaching and supervision and put on those different hats when they're appropriate. Clear, set clear, specific expectations and goals. And that is not just the responsibility of the mentee, the person you're coaching, but it's also the responsibility of the coach. It's a mutual requirement that those objectives and goals are set and agreed to, and then work towards achieving them. And throughout the coaching sessions, in some cases, which can overlap years, when you're coaching, it's not just a matter of 2 or 3 sessions. Coaching sessions can go on for multiple years. Revisit those expectations and goals, reset them if necessary, set new ones, and measure performance against achieving those. And sometimes when the same expectation of their goal is showing up repetitively and it's not being achieved, revisit it to see if it's really important anymore. Often, if you're not achieving certain things or doing certain things, it's because they've lost importance. So it's important to revisit those as you move forward. And lastly, this is an approach that I use extensively, is storytelling, examining options, and I never provide answers. Coaching isn't about telling people how to do things. It's about opening their minds to different approaches, and I often do that through the storytelling. I bring up, on particular issues we're talking about, I'll bring up examples of past things that are similar that I've dealt with, and the things that I did in those type of situations and whether they were successful or not. And then we talk about those options and whether that may or may not work in the particular situation that we're discussing. But it's really important for me that the person I'm coaching is the one who takes responsibility to set the path as to the approach they're going to take and make that decision as to how they're going to deal with that particular situation, and do that independent, and they have the influence from me in terms of my knowledge and the things I've talked to them about, but their decision is independent. And that's really important because the accountability for their decision has to be on the person that you're coaching. The accountability on making that decision is not with the coach, and it shouldn't be. The accountability, it's up to the person to make their own decisions and be accountable for their decisions. They're using the information from the coach to inform that decision, nothing more, nothing less. And I can't stress how important that is because all of us as professionals are responsible for our own decisions. So with that, you've heard enough from me. I'm going to start the panel discussion now. And the panel discussion is going to really provide you some insight from Annette and Emily on their experiences, both as being a coach as well as being on the receiving end of coaching. So Annette, we've kind of got a long history with each other. I've been your coach for a number of years. Maybe you can start off our panel discussion by just talking a little bit about what coaching has meant for you and what you've gained from it and some of your experiences on coaching, receiving coaching.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I have to say that this is really my first job or position that I had where I had the opportunity to work with a mentor. I went into forest technology kind of in my mid-30s, and prior to that, I never really had coaching or mentorship in previous roles. And I guess I'm sure I have, but it was never really that direct one-on-one mentorship. I'm sure there was some, through training and stuff, but the idea of sitting down with a coach or mentor, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. So when I got into my position, Mike offered that opportunity, and I definitely took it. And yeah, it's been really interesting. It's really neat because when we meet up, we go outside of the office environment, which I think is so beneficial because it just provides a space where you can relax. It's a little more comfortable, and you just kind of let that conversation flow. And like Mike said, he always puts it on me to bring topics and discussion to the meetings. And sometimes I'll have a list of things I want to discuss, and there's times where I'm like, I don't really know, like I don't really have anything to specific to talk about, but the conversation just goes. And Mike always, with his history and experience, there's always stories and insight. And to be honest, I always leave the meetings feeling really enlightened and seeing a different perspective on things. And I think that's the most beneficial thing, is just looking outside the box and hearing different perspectives on situations that I'm going through, or how to go further on this path or whatever. So I think, yeah, it's very beneficial just having those conversations. And it's been interesting in my role now, as I've started leading teams now. It's neat because I've kind of organically become a bit of a coach. And it's been a really neat process. And I've obviously learned a lot from Mike as a mentee. And I'm definitely going to carry what I've experienced and what I've learned through to help the people that are looking for mentorship for me. So yeah, it's been a really positive experience.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same as Annette, coming from mining and more labor roles before I went to university. Kind of younger people in the workforce, they were kind of maybe brushed aside. You're treated, maybe there's not a lot of respect there or even just collaboration, just because you're younger and experienced. Viewpoints and decisions weren't really a collaborative thing. And what really surprised me, even in my first summer student role, working in an orchard and on a large silviculture tree plant, is just how much ownership the professionals took of this young summer student. And even though I was only going to be there for 4 months, all the force professionals I talked to, they took the time to mentor in their own way, answer any questions, explain the whys of why I was doing these different activities and their opinions on it, how they've run into in the past, any issues they've had, difficulties, etc. So yeah, I was super surprised at that ownership. And I had many mentors that first summer. I had two supervisors, but I had tons of different, fellow employees that also mentored me in their own way because I was young and inexperienced. So despite it being a super busy summer, it's summer in silviculture, all these different professionals took time to take me on logging tours, to explain planning, show me things in the office. And again, I'd never really experienced that in other sectors of the workforce. And it was super beneficial for me. That first summer, I got a good broad exposure of industrial forestry. And it's because these different people took ownership and they wanted to mentor, they wanted to help this young person. And I found it even throughout my, subsequent summers and term kind of contracts. Everywhere I went, people just took the time to kind of explain things to you. And I was lucky enough to be in a group of 30 professionals in a woodlands group. And every single one of them, if I had a question, they would absolutely answer and give opinions and thoughts. So it was really, really good.
It's really important for me to understand what works and what doesn't work. Is there any practices, I'll open it up to both of you. What practices individually for you were preferable? And, how do you communicate to your coach what's working for you and what isn't? My experience as a coach, it's often difficult to get that feedback unless you specifically ask for it. And so I'm just curious, what experiences and practices do you think are most beneficial from your perspectives?
Yeah, like I kind of ran into two main styles. So kind of that old school approach where I guess it's almost more like a supervision. It's kind of one way, it's kind of like telling you what to do versus a softer approach, more collaborative. And I found for me that worked better, the softer collaborative approach. Um, some of my most effective mentoring actually came from fellow coworkers because we, first built a really good relationship, mutual respect, and we kind of suffered together sometimes out in the field. So they kind of understood where I was coming from. I could understand that they had more experience. And yeah, definitely that collaborative approach works the best for me.
Yeah, I think that's really important to understand the personalities you're working with. And like Mike said, like he likes to use storytelling and bring those sessions outside of the office environment. And I think that's really worked for me. I think, again, it's allowed me to be a little more comfortable. It's a little more casual. And that's something I've definitely brought to my team to help mentor them in ways. So I try to make the time to actually still go out to the field and one-on-one with them, with each of my crew members, and use that time, again, outside of that office environment to kind of take off the lead hat and put on kind of the coaching hat and just talk about, where things are going, how, they're enjoying what they're doing, what their plan is, stuff like that. And to use, again, my experiences to help them work through any challenges they may have. So yeah, I think that's really important. And like Mike said, it really comes down to that mutual respect and understanding those personalities that you're working with. And I think if that mutual respect is there, then it's really not an issue to bring up things that, hey, this isn't really working. Maybe that advice didn't really work. Could we discuss, another route or other options? So yeah, I think that's really important for sure.
Yeah, and it's also important to me that if you're the coach, you have to adapt as well. It's not just, up to the individual. Emily, you mentioned old school. When I think back to my earlier days of coaching, when I was with the Forest Service, it was a very command and control type of environment. And the coaching was really about, this is the policy manual, and this is what you follow. And as a business owner, I really had to adapt because my coaching was really more about how to be adaptive, how to be innovative, and how to be a professional. And because, we rely, all of my technical employees belong to professional associations, and that professionalism in their practice is very important. And, it's interesting how that changes from not only over time, but within organizations. From, as I said, a really command and control type of organization to an organization within my company now, which is really a matrix. And we have a whole bunch of specialists that have to work with each other. And yeah, just what I coach about has really changed over time. And I'm not sure if either of you have had, similar experiences over your careers that things change over time and the needs change.
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, I think that's part of, one, the industry, and two, of career development. Things are going to change and things are always kind of fluid. And I think the adaptability is really important for forest professionals as well as lead roles in coaching. And not only for the mentor, but I think the mentee as well. I think it's important for the mentee to understand that things do continue to develop and change. And you're also going to work with different personalities. So that not only goes from the mentor to the mentee of working with personalities, but it's also receiving that information and constructive criticism and the options, to be able to move forward. So I think that adaptability is really important.
So we talked about setting objectives and how important that is. And I know, Annette, when you and I first got together, you had some uncertainty over career direction. You had a couple different paths in front of you, and we discussed and talked that out. That was one of your objectives, and you had others. So from Annette and Emily, from either of your experiences, how sometimes it's really, I find that people have a tough time setting those objectives and those goals, especially on career path and maybe some of the personal growth that they want to achieve. Any insight or advice you can provide on things that the mentee should think about that might help them make decisions on which objectives or what pathways to choose?
Yeah, I guess it can be really hard to set objectives, especially if you're early on in your career and you've just graduated. It's hard to know what direction you want to go career-wise. I know myself, I graduated in my mid-20s. You're younger, you're not totally sure even where you're going to end up living or what role you're going to take on. So myself, early on, I knew I wanted to try a bit of everything, and that was my main objective coming out of school, was get that exposure and see different components of the industry and see what kind of called to me. I was lucky. I got an assistant forester role, and that really helped with that because I got that broad exposure to, all different components of forestry, time in silviculture, tree planting and site prep and logging and road building and also planning. And ultimately I did find which interests spoke to me. So my kind of advice to people, to be especially newer grads, would be to try everything and to have that objective of getting that broad exposure initially, and then you can choose more specific ones as time goes on.
Yeah, I definitely have to second that. Just quickly, I think it's so important just to be open to new tasks, new opportunities that are presented to you. Because sometimes you think, there's something that you think you'll really enjoy and you get into it and maybe it's not what you initially thought it was. So yeah, like Emily said, just be open to try those opportunities and just experience. And I think how you're going to learn what you do enjoy and what you want to move forward with.
Yeah, and those transition periods happen throughout your career. And that's, when I said earlier, coaching can occur over multiple years. Because at various points in your career, you have to make decisions and set certain pathways. Sometimes you might want to take a path to specialize in some certain thing or take advantage of a promotion. And it's nice to have your coach to kind of have those discussions with and back you up, especially if you're lacking a little bit of confidence in terms of what direction you should take. Any advice on how, when you go through those transitions in your career, how that coaching may help, or what some of those transitions could possibly be? Because I think it's real important.
Yeah, I think there's so many transitions when you go through a career, right? There's transitions through, internally in the same company. You might get different roles from being a tech and, eventually maybe a lead or a project manager or something different. Or it could be a transition into kind of a new specialized role or a new specialized job. And maybe you'll find something that you enjoy and you kind of want to branch out and try those new things. So I think it's almost in a way more comforting to be able to discuss stuff like that with a coach or a mentor, and just to get, again, insight, different perspective. And sometimes it's just nice to be able to talk that through with someone and get outside opinion on what they think, if that even suits you. Sometimes they can look in on from the outside and they kind of see how you work, and they'll say stuff that might surprise you. So
Yeah, so my experiences as a mentee and just feeling that ownership and support early on in my career, I really want to kind of give back to the young people that I do run into. So even if I'm not, formally a mentor, I've done some hiring for small companies. I'm talking to these young foresters and forest techs and just chatting with them, like letting them know giving them information, just showing that the people out there, the other professionals, like do care and they want to help them. I find very rewarding as well, and it feels nice to kind of give back to the younger people in the industry. Being self-employed, I don't really have a team like Annette has. It's me, I'm just a one-man show. But whenever I can, I give QC, I give feedback, and I just try to connect with these younger professionals. And I always try to explain why I do things a certain way and then try to get that two-way communication like we've talked about of what their thoughts are and what they're kind of seeing out there.
And talking about transitions now, Annette, when we started our coaching sessions, you were kind of in a technical position, and now you're in a senior leadership position and you have your own team under you. Does your past coaching experiences or as being a mentee influence you now as a coach to your team members?
oh, absolutely. I see what I got out of it, just talking to you as my mentor, and yeah, knowing how I always felt coming out of those conversations, and being able to, again, bring those discussions that I probably wouldn't bring to many other people, and who, as a mentor, you could understand what I'm saying with your experience and stuff. I definitely want to bring that to my team. I think it's so important. I think it brings that mutual respect, and I also think that it really helps the confidence, especially as being new in the career and in the industry. I think providing that support and the options when people are trying to figure out where they want to go, and different pathways. I think that's really important to build the confidence and provide kind of those stepping stones for them to work on, you know, being successful. And I think even to me, I think that's so important because I love seeing my team succeed. So yeah, I think definitely being a mentee has helped me in my role now.
Okay. Yeah, well, great discussion, and being time sensitive, I think we'll put closure to our first panel discussion. So thank you, Annette and Emily, for sharing your insights. I think it's been a very valuable discussion. Maybe Emily, if I could ask you and maybe talk about some of the outcomes of coaching from an individual perspective.
Yeah, like I've moved around a bit in my career, and one big benefit of that is having a lot of different coaches in different situations, you know, out in the field, in the office, and through different phases of my personal life. Yeah, so the coaches in my career have helped me professionally, of course, but also personally. They've kind of helped shape who I am as a person in my personal life. And this was especially important during the early years of my career, right? Because you're young, you're kind of unsure of yourself, and you're unsure of where you wanted to go. So, kind of the biggest outcomes for me was the confidence in self and decision making. Now, this isn't so much getting the technical knowledge. Of course, they did help assist me with some of that, but it's just having the confidence to kind of work out these situations, because tons of things in forestry environmental are unique situations. So just the confidence to kind of go through it and search for the information, and knowing where those information sources are. And then the biggest kind of benefit to me has been building professional relationships, having those trusted conversations, and being able to come with those creative solutions. You know, even to this day, working for myself, I still call up those old coaches if I have, you know, sort of an issue I run into, technical or not, and just to discuss what their opinions are of it, what they would do, you know, if they have any sort of input. And that's been really, really beneficial to me and to my company. So I think all these different components, these things that these coaches help you with, ultimately has given me a lot of job satisfaction, and it's helped my career grow because I have these professional connections, and I have kind of the confidence and the exposure.
Yeah, good. Thank you. And I think, from myself being operating a company, there's a lot of organizational outcomes of coaching, positive outcomes. I think, first of all, for me, it really helps to create a really good workplace culture. And because people see you lifting people up and building people's careers and supporting people, and I think that's really important. The fact that people recognize that certainly improves team performance. And it really, from my perspective, as the owner of a company, it really enhances the relationship between employees and management. It's not very often you get to sit down with the senior member in the organization and talk about your career and get advice as to how to continue to develop and different pathways to select and different pathways that are open to you. And I think that relationship is so positive in the organization and so rewarding and valuable. And leadership development. It gives me the opportunity as a coach, talking to many of my employees, to really make some good decisions on who the future leaders are, and really work with those people and develop those people. Because one of the things that's really important to me is making sure they have rewarding careers within our organization, because what's really important to me is employee retention. And if I can't provide a rewarding career, I'm going to lose people, and I don't want to lose people. So From an organizational perspective, those are really the highlights for me that I think are important. We're going to move on now to our final panel discussion. And this panel discussion is about rewarding careers. And when I think back of my career over the 40 plus years, you know, I've done forest management, timber harvesting, supervision and inspection, silviculture, forest recreation, forest grazing, forest land use, wildfire, whole round of environmental work on contamination. I've specialized in reclamation. When I started school, I never would have ever thought that a highlight of my career and a legacy of my career near the end of my career would be working on a project, actually 3 projects in Mongolia, the last of which was putting together a mine closure plan for which we developed within the plan a monitoring program and a trial program for reestablishing the ecology on the ecological ecology on the Gobi landscape, where the mine was in the Gobi Desert. Never in my dreams would I have thought I've been doing something like that in my forestry career, but it happened. And to open up the panel discussion, maybe Emily, if I can pass it on to you, and if you could talk about what are some of the opportunities that you've seen through your experience in terms of having a diverse and rewarding career in the forestry profession from when you started till now?
Yeah, so I've been able to try a lot of different things. I've spent summers scoping the woods for power poles, making power pole products, making fence posts. I've helped manage a tree improvement in orchards that considering tree genetics. I've helped with large silviculture tree plants, site prep management, post-harvest assessments, logging, road installs, crossing installs, the supervision part of it, even the business skills as well of looking at finances and logistics and creating bids and different financial proposals. I got to do lots of forest planning that really opened a lot of doors. You're considering tons of different features on the landscape. I was even able to switch over to environmental consulting for a period of time. And, my forest experience, especially with planning and even in school, really prepared me, and it set me up to be able to do a large number of these roles. That, as well as the different coaches I've had and the different, kind of things I've been exposed to. Yeah, so I'd say my career is a lot different than I anticipated. When I was in school, I kind of thought, oh, I'll just be maybe a bush monkey. I'll just be running around out there hanging ribbon or something. But as kind of life change and your personal life changes, I have a family now and I started farming. My career's kind of evolved with that. And that's really exciting to me is my career has evolved with my personal life, and it's kind of allowed me to keep practicing while still having that work-life balance. So yeah, I've had lots of different experiences, and I'm pretty excited to see how my career will evolve as I go through different stages 5-10 years from now.
Yeah, it's interesting coming out of the forest technology program, because when I was looking to go into it, it was kind of suggested that if I went through the program, I'd be working in the green zone. I'd be working up north. And, I was a little hesitant about that, but I thought I'd give it a shot anyway. And I think when I graduated, I was quite surprised at what was all out there that you could do with the program that I took. And yeah, it was really interesting. There was just so much more out there than I had initially expected. And to be honest, when I came into environmental consulting, I've done again, so many tasks. Like Emily listed, she's done, you know, seems like everything. I've done a lot of planning, land management, planning, reclamation, remediation, fire smart work, you know, stuff like that. And really, when it came down to it, I was so glad that I took that program, because I felt like all of the courses that I took, even though thinking, you know, maybe at the time I'm like, why would I need this? Everything kind of came into play directly or indirectly. And almost, I would say, all the tasks that I've been presented with so far, I've had somewhat of a base knowledge, just because of the diverse courses that we took, or that I took through the NATE program. And yeah, so I think when I graduated, I was quite surprised at what was actually all out there. And I think I'm still learning, you know, and seeing different job posts and stuff, that I'm like, holy, yeah, that's a thing, that's a specialty. And it's just, there's so much opportunity out there and so much diversity that, you know, there is for forest professionals, for sure.
Yeah, and it's really exciting for me because, you know, when I look at right now, my career is focused on, you know, developing my staff and being a coach, but I also provide strategic services for clients on relationships with government and strategic advice. I do risk management, risk assessment, specialize in reclamation. I've developed policy for government. And, you know, for me, especially as you're coming up in your career, a lot of times you go to interviews and, you know, they say, well, what's your career path? What are you going to do? What do you want to do? And that's such a loaded question because a lot of times you don't know. It depends what doors open for you. And it's so important to realize upon those opportunities if you have an interest in them. Because there's so many different things we can do in our forestry profession, and that our forestry education enables us to do with competence. And so to me, it's a difficult and challenging thing to go through your career and decide on what doors might open for you and what pathways to take. I think one of the things for me is, and what's been most valuable that we should never forget, is the forest education that we've all taken, whether you've been through NATE, where you get exposed to forest engineering and wildfire fighting and forest management planning, block layout and harvest design, all sorts of other stuff, and or take the degree program where you're focused a lot more on the long-term forest management planning. It's so valuable, you know, until you're later in your career, you don't really understand how valuable that education is and how it enables you to do many things in your profession that you'd never thought you were going to do. And, you know, for example, when you look at forest management planning and all that it entails, we learn about it in school, the values that we have to consider, the stakeholder input, First Nation considerations, ecological and environmental considerations. It's really impressive of how we can bring all that together. And there's not a lot of other professionals that have that broad of a knowledge. And within all of those different things I talked about, you can pick specialty streams. And I really can't emphasize how important that education is as a starting point to a professional forestry career.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Again, like I said, the diversity of the courses that I took at NATE absolutely prepared me for what I do now. And like Mike said, like I've worked on projects which require historic resources and FNC and stakeholder consultation with municipalities and the government. And then it also has the biophysical assessments, wildlife, like everything just kind of comes together. And I think it's so important to have that baseline. And that's also where you're going to realize what you're interested in, what path, you know, you might be really interested in going and pursuing. And I think it's important to realize that that is an option, and that, you know, if you find something you're interested in, there's always, you know, continuous learning and getting more insight on those situations and those tasks. And yeah, I think it's so important to know that, you know, that doesn't stop, and definitely pursue what you're interested in.
Yeah, totally. Like we've said, like each consideration on landscape planning is a specialty of its own, you know, hydrology, wildlife, these archaeologists, like you mentioned. So it's really good that we get that exposure in school, and it kind of gives you some confidence going out into the workforce. And something that really was important to me when I was considering the program is the sign-off ability that we have. You know, a forest professional can sign off on multiple environmental plans. Many job postings I've noticed have the forestry education listed as a qualification. And so you're able to move between industries. And that's really exciting because maybe some other educations might not have so much, you know, directional movement. And what ultimately convinced me to go into forestry was that the forest professionals can sign off on these forest management plans, and they're the only ones that can. And to me, that's pretty exciting, right? It just gives you a lot of opportunities career-wise.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, an important part of that, Emily, I think, is also maintaining your competency. We have all those things we can sign off on, but it's important we self-select and make sure we're competent in doing that. That's so important. So in the interest of time, we've got just some real brief conclusions. And, you know, from my part, it's really be responsible as a forest management professional and coach and help others in our profession. That's so important. And secondly, take advantage of career opportunities. You know, the more you learn about the different pathways you can take, the more doors will open for you. And really find that passion. What are you really interested in, especially as you get into mid-career? You have to be doing what you love, and find that passion in your heart and pursue it, because that's where you're going to have a rewarding career.
Yeah, like a key point I would kind of drive home is for young people, especially coming to the workforce, is just be coachable. Learn from the people who want to teach you, and generally they have your best interests at heart. So yeah, just be coachable, be gracious, accept criticism and suggestions, and always seek out that feedback. And yeah, just, you know, be good to work with, and yeah, just keep learning as you go.
Yeah, I think those are all excellent points. Yeah, I just have to say, be open to new opportunities, new tasks, new experiences. Take everything in while you can and while it's presented to you. And don't be afraid to seek out mentorship. I think you'll be surprised how beneficial it is, and, you know, how much you'll get out of it. I think it's so important. So
Okay, Chanel, I think that wraps up our presentation, so I'll turn it over to you.
It's some great final advice from all three of you. I really appreciate it. I have a ton of my own questions that popped up through this whole session, so I'd love to continue this conversation offline sometime too. But it is one, so if anybody does need to jump off and continue with their day, feel free to do that. We are recording this, so we can always send it out if you want to be able to catch the last little bit. But we do have a few questions. I'd love to be able to get to that. So if anybody's willing to stay on for a few extra minutes, we'll continue with the question period. I actually have one that popped in just while you were giving your final advice there, and it's a two-part question. So I'll give it to you one at a time. First, how long does it typically take to figure out which area you really want to focus on? I'm not sure if they're going to want the answer to this because 20 years, 25 years into my career, I don't know if I still don't know the answer to that, but I'll pass that along to the panel here for whoever wants to take that. But how long does it typically take to figure out where you really want to focus on?
I personally, I think it depends on the individual. Some people kind of get that insight early on in their career and they just kind of jump on that and, you know, go hard and really dive into that. And then I think other people, it takes a little bit longer. It might take, yeah, a lot longer. And you might, you know, just take all of that in and try and figure out what you're really passionate about. But I do think it comes in time. And again, I think it's just seeking that out, seeking those opportunities really helps.
Yeah, I'd agree with Annette. Depends on the individual. Like myself personally, it took me probably 2 years to really hone in on stuff and feel like I had a good overview of everything to kind of pursue it. But some people are lifelong learners and love things to change all the time too. So personality and personal goals for sure.
And for me, it was very early. It was during forestry school where I gained a love for reclamation, you know, turning a disturbed landscape back into something valuable. And I really didn't become a specialist in that until later in my career. After I left government and started my own company, I really developed my competencies in that. And that was after 31 years. But that love continued throughout the career. I tried a whole bunch of other different things. But when that door opened for me and I could really go in that direction and specialize in it, and it ended up working in Mongolia in a silver mine, it was just awesome. So for me, it was early to find out, but it took me my entire career to get there.
So the answer really is it depends. Depends on you, it depends on the individual, depends on how soon you might find that thing that really drives you, that thing that makes you feel really passionate about being in forestry. The second part to this question is, I feel like I am yet to fully experience being mentored, particularly in terms of having those deeper conversations. How should I go about initiating that?
I'll maybe start off. I think, first of all, find someone that you trust and have a lot of confidence in. And I'm going to suggest even that doesn't necessarily have to be within your profession. Just somebody that you have confidence in that help you set some of that direction. If they're in the profession, it's better because then you can have more detailed discussions, but it's really important. I talked about trust and trust being two ways. You need to find that individual that you can trust and who's just as interested in helping you as you are open to receiving advice. Annette, Emily?
Yeah, I'd agree. Nothing really to add to that besides sometimes a third party to your life can give you a lot of insight that you don't see for yourself. So yeah, even just a close friend, if you just kind of describe your career aspirations, they might be able to, you know, tell you something about yourself you've never thought or give you different ideas on ways to approach it. Um, yeah, beyond that, like within the industry, there are different groups within the industry. You know, you could find, I don't even know what organization to kind of put forward, but you know, there's things like Work Wild. Perhaps you could to get, you know, forestry specific information and maybe find those mentors further into your life.
I'd just like to add, approach our association.
Yeah.
And, you know, Chanel can put out word to the membership saying, hey, we have a member or a wannabe member that needs some advice and wants some coaching, and someone will step forward. Pretty positive of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's lots of different roles in mentorship and coaching too. There's the mentor that you'll have as an in training registrant when you enter the profession, but that's not necessarily the only mentor or coach that you'll have throughout your career. So um, many people have multiple mentors, and it might depend on what area they're looking for mentoring and coaching in. I have another question that stands out to me because a lot of our in training registrants, as they're going through the initial professional development program, one of their capstone assignments in the beginning courses is to create a professional development plan, which really helps set the tone for that continuous learning that you were talking about and being a lifelong learner. In that plan, part of what they need to do is identify the challenges and barriers that they have in their professional life and in their personal life that might make that a challenging thing to do, and so that they can identify what those are and mitigate for those challenges and barriers so that they can ensure their professional development plan is successful over time. And one of the things that we hear a lot is about confidence and really not feeling like they are meeting their goals, and that they're not really confident providing their services quite yet, and are really not knowing where to start. So how can mentors help their mentees or the people they're coaching understand that progress is sometimes small and incremental in steps? And how can mentors encourage them to stay motivated through the process?
That's interesting. That's a good comment. I think it comes down to, really, for the mentee, I think it comes down to honesty and being vulnerable and just talking about that. And I think for the mentor, yeah, it's really crucial to be honest about, how things do take time. And I think a lot of that confidence comes with experience. And I think it definitely does take time. Some people come in, keep going with a lot more confidence just naturally, and others it takes a little bit of time to get their feet on the ground. But I think just providing that support and again, that vulnerability and being open with where they're at, and like we had mentioned before, just that storytelling, that sharing those experiences, because I think we've all been there at one point, in our career. And so I think just providing that support and those experiences, I think definitely helps.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of these professional development plans and setting objectives, it's looking forward, right? Forward in your life. But sometimes people, to improve their confidence, they need to look back and look at their achievements, how far they've come, within school, how far they've come since 6 months ago they started this job, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes to build confidence, you got to remind people of how far they've come and how they're probably on the right track to continual improvement.
Yeah, and it's always going to be incremental. It's the development of your career, the development of your competencies are always in steps. There's never one big giant leap, and the people who have taken those big giant leaps are often the people who have failed. Not always, but often.
Yeah, it kind of takes patience. You have to kind of work your way through and develop those through steps, like Mike said.
Absolutely. Well, we're quite a bit over time, but this has been a great conversation, and I have a ton more of my own questions that I'd love to share with people over time. But if anybody thank you for those who stuck around. If you do have follow-up questions, please feel free to send them to me, and we'll see if we can get them answered. A huge thank you to our panelists, Mike, Annette, and Emily. I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us and you shared a lot of your own personal experiences, which is really, really helpful. Like Emily said about sometimes you have to just be a little bit vulnerable and share with your mentor where you're at and what you need. So this was a great step in that direction. I really appreciate you demonstrating a lot of the characteristics and the skills that you're sharing with our participants today. So thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you also to all of our participants for joining. We will make this presentation available as well afterwards. This particular session is part of the professional development series. So we are committing to doing monthly or bi-monthly or bi-weekly, I suppose it would be, sessions throughout the year instead of a big technical session at the end of the year, to make it a lot more accessible and easier for you to be able to attend to a lot of different conversations and topics. We do have another session coming up at the end of November from Northern Forestry Center. So check your registrant distribution for that one. That'll be on November 28th. And we have a few more throughout December and January and well into the spring as well. So hope to see you at some of those. Thank you everybody for joining. I appreciate you staying on the extra time, and a special thanks to our panelists.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a wonderful day, everyone.